Ravenswood Asylum, an imposing edifice on the outskirts of a forgotten town, had been abandoned for over 50 years. Locals whispered about the building's dark past and the unspeakable horrors that occurred within its decaying walls. The asylum was built in the early 1900s to house the mentally ill, but it soon became a place of torment rather than treatment. Patients were subjected to cruel experiments, leading to many unexplained deaths. A group of urban explorers, fascinated by the asylum's grim history, decided to spend a night inside. Armed with flashlights and cameras, they ventured into the foreboding structure one stormy evening. As they entered the main hall, the explorers were immediately struck by the eerie silence. The air was thick with an unidentifiable stench, and the oppressive darkness seemed to swallow their flashlight beams. They split into pairs to cover more ground. Rachel and Mike headed towards the old operating theater, while Lisa and Dan explored the patient wards. The walls were lined with rusted metal beds, each bearing the marks of countless suffering souls. Rachel and Mike found the operating theater in shambles. Rusted surgical tools lay scattered, and a massive blood-stained chair stood ominously at the center. Suddenly, a chilling breeze swept through the room, and the temperature dropped drastically. Back in the wards, Lisa and Dan heard faint whispers echoing through the halls. They followed the sounds, leading them to a room where a single decrepit wheelchair faced a cracked mirror. The whispers grew louder, forming incomprehensible words. Rachel and Mike were startled by a loud bang behind them. They turned to see the operating theater door slam shut on its own. Panic set in as they realized they were not alone. Mike tried the door, but it wouldn't budge. In the ward, Lisa and Dan saw shadowy figures moving in the periphery of their vision. When they shone their flashlights, the figures vanished, leaving only an overwhelming sense of dread. Rachel and Mike heard the faint sound of sobbing coming from a dark corner of the operating theater. They approached cautiously and found a spectral figure of a young girl in a tattered hospital gown, her eyes hollow and vacant. The girl raised her hand and pointed towards the ceiling, revealing a hidden trapdoor. Despite their fear, Rachel and Mike climbed up into the attic, where they discovered the source of the asylum's malevolence. In the attic, they found old journals detailing the horrific experiments conducted by Dr. Blackwood, the asylum's head physician. The journals spoke of attempts to summon spirits through cruel and inhumane methods. Lisa and Dan, still in the ward, were cornered by the spectral apparitions. They felt an icy grip on their shoulders and heard voices urging them to leave before it was too late. The spirits grew more aggressive, pushing them towards the exit. Rachel and Mike, armed with the knowledge from the journals, performed a makeshift ritual to release the trapped spirits. As they recited the words, the ghosts' tormented wails echoed through the asylum, shaking the very foundations. With a blinding flash of light, the spirits were finally freed, leaving the asylum in utter silence. The explorers fled the building, vowing never to return. Ravenswood Asylum now stands as a grim reminder of the past, its halls forever haunted by the souls who suffered within. Blackwood Manor, an ancient mansion hidden deep within the woods, had been abandoned for nearly a century. Its grand architecture now lay in ruins, overrun by nature and haunted by a sinister past. The manor was once the home of the Blackwood family, known for their wealth and influence. However, rumors of dark rituals and mysterious disappearances plagued their legacy, leading to the mansion's eventual abandonment. Curiosity drew a group of paranormal investigators to the manor. Equipped with ghost-hunting gadgets, they aimed to uncover the truth behind the tales of hauntings and curses that surrounded the old estate. As they approached the mansion, the investigators felt an overwhelming sense of foreboding. The air was heavy with an unnatural stillness, and the overgrown garden seemed to watch them with malevolent eyes. They entered through the grand foyer, where a massive chandelier hung precariously from the ceiling. The once opulent interior was now covered in dust and cobwebs, each room a time capsule of the past. Splitting into smaller teams, they began their investigation. Sarah and Tom explored the East Wing, while Emily and Jack ventured into the West. The manor's long, dimly lit hallways seemed to stretch endlessly. In the East Wing, Sarah and Tom found a library filled with ancient books and artifacts. As they examined a dusty tome, they heard footsteps echoing behind them. Turning around, they saw nothing but felt an icy presence. Emily and Jack discovered the dining hall, where a grand table still bore the remnants of a long-forgotten feast. As they documented their findings, the temperature dropped, and they saw their breath mist in the air. Suddenly, the chandelier in the foyer crashed to the ground with a deafening roar, sending shards of glass flying. The investigators regrouped, shaken but determined to continue their search. They decided to investigate the basement, rumored to be the site of the Blackwood family's dark rituals. As they descended the creaking stairs, they felt an oppressive energy growing stronger with each step. In the basement, they found an altar surrounded by strange symbols and dried bloodstains. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and whispers seemed to emanate from the very walls. The investigators set up their equipment, capturing eerie phenomena on their cameras and recorders. Disembodied voices, cold spots, and shadowy figures filled their senses, confirming the manor's haunted reputation. As they continued, Sarah felt a cold hand grip her ankle. She screamed and looked down to see a spectral figure with hollow eyes staring up at her from the floor. Panic spread among the group as they realized they were not alone. Emily, overcome by a sudden trance, began reciting an incantation in an unknown language. The room shook violently, and the symbols on the altar glowed with a sinister light. The spirits of the Blackwood family had awakened. In a desperate attempt to escape, the investigators fled the basement, pursued by vengeful apparitions. They burst out of the manor, gasping for breath and vowing never to return. Blackwood Manor remains a place of dread, its cursed halls echoing with the tormented cries of the past. Ashwood Orphanage, nestled in a secluded forest, had been left to decay for decades. Its once cheerful halls were now shadows of despair, haunted by the tragic fate of its young residents. The orphanage was established in the 1800s to care for children without families. However, neglect and abuse soon turned it into a place of misery. Many children vanished without a trace, their fates sealed in darkness. A team of ghost hunters, intrigued by the orphanage's grim history, decided to uncover the truth behind the stories of haunting. They arrived one cold, foggy night, ready to confront the spirits that lingered within. As they stepped inside, the hunters were met with an overwhelming sense of sadness. The walls, covered in faded murals, told stories of happier times now lost. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and decay. They began their investigation in the main hall, where children's laughter once echoed. Now, only silence greeted them. Dust motes danced in their flashlight beams, creating an eerie ambience. The team split into pairs to cover more ground. Sam and Alex headed towards the old dormitories, while Kate and Ryan explored the playroom. Each creaking floorboard seemed to whisper secrets of the past. In the dormitories, Sam and Alex found rows of small, rusted beds. They heard faint giggles and saw fleeting shadows darting around. A child's doll, left abandoned, seemed to move on its own. Kate and Ryan discovered the playroom, where toys lay scattered across the floor. The room was unnaturally cold, and they felt as if unseen eyes were watching their every move. A music box began playing a haunting lullaby on its own. Suddenly, the sound of running footsteps filled the air. The team regrouped, following the noise to a locked door at the end of a long corridor. With great effort, they managed to pry it open. Beyond the door, they found a hidden staircase leading to the attic. As they climbed, the atmosphere grew heavier and the air colder. The attic was filled with old, dusty toys and forgotten belongings. They set up their equipment, capturing strange orbs and unexplained movements. The spirits of the orphanage's lost children seemed drawn to their presence, manifesting as faint apparitions and ghostly whispers. Sam, feeling a tug on his sleeve, looked down to see the spectral figure of a little girl. She pointed towards a dusty chest in the corner. Inside, they found old letters and diaries detailing the abuse and neglect the children suffered. As they read the heartbreaking accounts, the air grew colder, and the spirits became more agitated. The team heard cries for help and felt icy fingers brush against their skin, urging them to leave. In a final act of desperation, they performed a cleansing ritual to release the trapped souls. The attic filled with an ethereal light, and the cries turned into whispers of gratitude. The children's spirits were finally free. The ghost hunters fled the orphanage, carrying with them the weight of the tragic stories they had uncovered. Ashwood Orphanage now stands as a somber monument to the lost souls who once called it home, their spirits at peace at last.